The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
Episode number 7. Wow. So this past weekend, we attended Camp Ego Trip's Valentine's Day party at Spin Nightclub. And man, Ego Trip knows how to throw a fucking party. I was trying to be in bed by like 2 because I had to be up early in order to drive to LA. But then it got to be 3, and then Dayton hit the decks, and then it was 4, and then it was 9 a.m., and I was hating the fuck out of life while munching on my breakfast burrito and shoving caffeine down my throat. But man, Ego Trip knows how to throw a fucking party. And that's a thing I kept reminding myself of as I struggled to keep my eyes open as we recorded a couple of podcasts in LA for that other show I do, which I will not shamelessly plug this time. But damn it was worth it. And I'll say another thing about the party. Dayton, he of Love Life and Music is for Lovers fame, I was wondering the whole night how he was going to approach his set, because he tends to kind of play like darker stuff, and all the other DJs that night were spinning kind of more up-tempo and melodic beats, but Dayton has yet to let me down. He somehow found a way to keep the energy of the night where it was, plus infuse his own style, plus respect the fact that he was the last one up and he'd need to bring the crowd energy down ever so slightly so that when the club closed at 4 a.m., people would fucking leave. Every time I go to a Love Life event, I walk away raving about his set more than the headliners they bring in. And he kind of looks like Vinny Chase from Entourage. So that's just not fair at all. At one point, my crew found a little corner to curl up in order to give our aching feet a break from all the jumping and the dancing and the stomping. And there's this handsome young lad sitting to our right who is in some deep level of meditation. My buddy Joseph, the sweetheart that he is, kind of tries to communicate to us that we should be mindful of the meditating guy. The meditating guy who is fucking meditating at the club. But as a meditator myself, I say that's sort of the whole point, right? If you decide to meditate at the club, you're kind of making a conscious decision to get right all up in your monkey mind's face, challenging your awareness to a fucking duel. That's some next level shit. You're daring the universe. Meditating dude was fine, of course. Next I saw him, he was eating a vegan bowl. There's this rager happening all around him, and the man decided that this would be a good venue for his own personal little yoga retreat. That shit would be weird as fuck anywhere else, but not when I hang out with you people. Anyway, enough about my awesome life. Today's guest is Jake Anderson, co-founder of the GhostDiaries.com. Janderson, who I've taken to calling him. I actually haven't. I just made that up right now. He's a writer and a blogger and a thinker and a filmmaker, and you'll discover in the coming interview a bit of a self-hater, but not like in a sad, mopey, I want to slit my wrist kind of way. Like in the it's charming because he's a writer kind of way. And I'm totally exaggerating that, by the way, based on just this like one tiny segment of our conversation. You'll see when it comes up. But I really, really dug talking to Jake. And I keep saying that every show, by the way, as if I'm gonna have one of you weirdos on the show and not actually enjoy talking to you. But with some guests, the conversation definitely flows a certain way. Like, he's my long lost cousin. We're into a lot of the same shit. There was a thing I really wanted to give him shit about during the interview, simply because I thought it would be entertaining, but I totally forgot because the conversation we were having about ghosts and reality and DMT just really just sucked me in, and I totally forgot about this thing that I wanted to do. Now, I can't be 100% certain that every detail of what I'm about to tell you is true. Could have been a miscommunication or misunderstanding, but a little birdie told me that my most miserable memory of volunteering for San Diego's regional burn was Jake Anderson's fault. You see, there's this totally unlit and confusing intersection at the La Jolla Indian campgrounds where the San Diego regional burn takes place, where people often get lost at, that the event orchestrators affectionately refer to as the corner of dark and where the fuck am I? And the event leads always try to make sure someone is stationed there with a light to direct people through this rural black hole, which legend states has eaten entire RVs in the dead of the night. It's like a burner Bermuda Triangle. So Janderson here supposedly didn't show up for his shift at the corner of dark and where the fuck am I? And producer Meg, who is the city planning lead, assigns me to go work it. By the way, this is also Friday night of the event, which I feel like tends to be the night where everyone is kind of like the most impatient because there's still a lot of fires to put out and a ton of people and art to help get stationed. It's still a heavy lifting day. Saturday night is fucking amazing. It's a lot of fun, but Friday is still a lot of work for the leads and most of the volunteers. I feel like that's the case, of course. I could be wrong. My co-art curation lead, who was basically the only art curation lead because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, was trying to direct another volunteer who had his own fire to put out to take me to the corner of dark and where the fuck am I on the golf cart. And this poor bastard who is freaking out because he has his own issues that he's trying to deal with, thinks he's being fucked with, so he kind of just loses it, and he's like, man, I don't have time for jokes and shit right now. And anyway, that might have been one of those you had to be there stories. So then off to the corner of dark and where the fuck am I go. To say I was pissed standing in this pitch black dump far away from people and really everything else would be an understatement. Jake, I totally am kidding with you, of course. Like I said, it could have been miscommunication or confusion or some other jeune. Seriously, no hard feelings. I think it's a hilarious story and I'm totally having a lot of fun with it, and I love having an excuse to tell the world about the corner of dark and where the fuck am I. Anyway, let's get to the interview with Jake Anderson. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the balls and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name, and it felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, because there ain't no one for to give you no name.
So anyway, usually guest walks in, I just hit record and we just start talking, and it's usually you've heard the podcast, it just kind of blends in halfway through the music, so yeah. I like the rawness of it. That's the way we started doing other podcasts, just kind of start talking and things start coming out.
I mean, that's what life is, you just start talking.
What do you want to do your podcast on?
It's going to be sort of, I hate using the word paranormal actually, but it's basically an extension of a blog I run called the Ghost Diaries.com.
I was just looking at that before you got over here, actually.
It's just a collection of all things unexplained and strange and fringe and weird. I actually kind of play the skeptic a bit in these things. I do have a definition of what I think ghosts are, but it's not, what most ghost hunters.
Okay, so I immediately have like 17 questions. First of all, how long has the blog been up?
We've been going about 2 years strong, over 2 years.
Nice. Yeah. And let me just say also for the listeners, calling it simply a blog, I feel like when people hear a blog these days, you think it's just like single article entries.
Right.
Like, this is an online magazine.
Yeah, you're right.
The whole layout and everything. It's like Vice.
And thank you, actually. Yeah, it is an online magazine. Yeah. Yeah.
So you started 2 years ago. What was the inspiration behind it?
A buddy of mine and I just realized that we talk way too much about weird shit to not start a blog about it. And so we just started writing weird articles, collecting strange vintage photos, and finding weird EVP recordings and sounds that planets make through the electromagnetic spectrum, and just all manner of strange things. We called it the Ghost Diaries, which I was actually violently opposed. Well, not violently, but I was opposed to it.
Because then fight over it.
Because we did not actually hit each other over it, but because it just immediately stigmatizes it. I wanted it to be something that could be more encapsulate just the unknown. But the Ghost Diaries, it's good for SEO. It's catchy.
It's catchy.
People like the word ghost.
Definitely.
People like the word diaries, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah,
is that a you have hard science behind that?
No, I don't. Okay. I do not have hard science behind the fact that people like diaries, but there are things like the Vampire Diaries, and there's popular shows. There's lots of books called the Diaries, and
no, I couldn't agree with you more. I was just hoping that
there's no hard science. I'm not going to pull out charts and graphs right now about the history of the word diary. And,
well, it's okay. People can't see it anyway. It's an audio.
Yeah,
show.
They wouldn't. Yeah. They would be.
So, do you remember an earlier time in your life where your interest in the supernatural first began?
Probably arguing with my Christian friend about the existence of God. I used to be a hardcore atheist, and I just delighted in finding these proofs. I think early Richard Dawkins stuff, and so I was always the very early skeptic. I always just believed in it's atoms in the void. It's molecules were just it's all materialistic. The universe is. Somewhere along the line, probably college in Santa Cruz, where there were drugs. Somewhere along the line, I started to believe that...
They have a very specific kind of drugs closer to Santa Cruz as well.
Yeah, they get really specific there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just that. It was also... Actually, it was a very specific semester in which I took quantum mechanics, metaphysics at the same time, right when I also happened to be dabbling in a few psychoactive agents. And it became clear to me that, at the very least, my previous definition of atheism was just as ignorant as any theistic definition.
Yeah. Was your family growing up, were they atheists?
Oh, yeah, they're very atheist.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you came from sort of that background.
I came from that background, but they never, they did disparage religion, but...
So what was the revelation that came to you infused with LSD and Santa Cruz?
I'm not going to go so far to say it was LSD.
All right, fine, mess up. What was
I don't think it's one. It's a multitude of really, actually, for me, it's ironically, it really does come down to a scientific principle, which is the uncertainty of the universe on a quantum level. Scientists cannot unite the fields of relativity and quantum mechanics, which are the two major theories that define our universe. One's large-scale relativity, Einstein, that was Einstein's thing. And quantum mechanics is the very small. The two contradict each other. Ask any physicist.
Yeah.
They contradict one another. And what they've actually shown is that on a quantum level, we cannot determine an objective state of any one atom as we're looking at it, because as we look at it, we change it. Mm-hmm. So the quantum subatomic world is actually kind of in an unfixed state. And our consciousness is what determines the definitive state of the particle. So my definition of ghost would be that I think that information can get left behind within that quantum world. And actually recent research has shown that there are scientists working on speculative research that consciousness becomes intertwined with quantum information on a subatomic level.
Okay, let me cut you off here. So I have some confusion about the word quantum because
I do too.
So correct me if I'm wrong. There is sort of like the woo-woo Deepak Chopra way of saying quantum, and then there is like the actual science quantum. Okay, good. So how do we describe that to
I think
a listener or a podcast host who doesn't have a full understanding of what it is?
I mean, it really depends on what assumptions are going to carry into it. I mean, that any physicists, most physicists, simply won't listen to, anything that even smacks of spirituality.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They're sad. They're not on tenure. They're.
Yeah. There is this one thing that the Christians do say that I reluctantly agree with, that they're like, a lot of scientists really do treat science as a religion, and they have the same dogmatic approach.
Right.
And it's funny because a lot of the greatest thinkers, like Einstein, for example, were the ones that were saying you need to think further out of the box. This is just what we know now.
Right.
But imagination and creativity is more important. So
there is a dogmatic belief to science. The difference, of course, between it and religion is that dogma is based on fact and not stories. But
no, I completely agree.
I like Burning Man also.
Really? That's weird.
I'm sorry. Any listeners right now maybe don't like quantum. I don't know.
No, you're very wrong.
People love quantum.
Yes. No, the reason people go to Burning Man and the reason we surround ourselves with these weird fucking people that go is specifically so we can have discussions like this.
I agree. I was being unnecessarily playing the role of devil's advocate.
No, I appreciate you doing that because I was looking for an excuse to sound super self-righteous and say that on the podcast.
No. I actually love, and that's one of the reasons. I mean, I knew you would be down to talk about any and all things because Burning Man is any and all things.
Absolutely.
I have a fascination with what can't be explained, and there's this misconception that scientists believe that they've explained everything.
Yes.
And they don't. And in fact, we now know that a huge portion of the universe is made up of something called dark matter, which we don't know what it is. Yeah. I mean, it's like an absurd percentage, like 60%. I don't know the exact percent, but it's a huge percentage. A huge other part of percentage of the universe is something called dark energy, which we know even less about.
Yeah.
So the matter that constitutes the universe that we understand makes up a tiny fraction of the actual universe. So scientists actually don't really know a whole lot about the universe. They know a lot about what they do know, but what they do know, they know a lot about it. What they don't know is a lot more.
Well, I mean, a lot of the process of the method is about disproving the opposite. So, I mean, I could say like a human being, I can't tell you definitively that a human being needs oxygen to survive. We do know, however, without oxygen, a human being cannot survive. It could be another gas or something else that we have not discovered yet. We don't have information about that we could survive on also.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean,
we disprove.
Yeah, we could. I mean,
we
I
disprove
think
the opposite is what we do. And we continue to learn and we continue to experiment. And anytime you have a scientist who takes this very like strong militant stance about the very nature of reality and refuses to go further, that's just silly. You know what I feel like, and let me see if this makes any sense to you. As a filmmaker, you're also a filmmaker.
Yeah.
You have like the artists, the visionaries, the photographers and the directors who move the very essence of the art form forward. They tend not to be, I'm not even going to generalize that. A lot of them tend not to be very technical. And then you have sort of like the mid-level filmmakers who are just like living like a professional lifestyle and they're paying like their house mortgage on it. Those people are super technical, and they also happen to be the most dogmatic. Like, oh no, if you don't use that kind of lighting or you don't
they're
have this kind of
assholes.
shutter, they're dickheads. So I feel like with scientists, it's a lot of like the same kind of thing. Like the ones that are super hardcore, those are the academics. I feel like that's the world of academia that is totally judgmental and fierce and militant about how this is the way it has to be, and if we don't know this, then it's bullshit. And then you have people like Einstein who are like, the tastemakers, the people who are writing the future of the science rather than just working within it.
I agree, and I think that's an interesting metaphor. To be fair, I do think a whole lot of physicists would probably just be like, no, we acknowledge that we acknowledge this mystery. Mm-hmm. We're just really busy trying to figure it out. Yeah. For example, there's an incredible documentary called Particle Fever. It was but it was recently released. And it was about everything that went on at the Hadron Collider. Mm-hmm. And the Hadron Collider was basically just this incredible facility they developed in Switzerland. And the whole purpose of it was to literally send particles as fast as they possibly could and crash the particles into each other and try and recreate the original conditions of the Big Bang.
Yeah. And people would know that as the God particle machine, yeah.
Well, that's what they were looking for.
Yeah.
They were looking for the Higgs boson, a.k.a. God particle. And so this whole documentary was tracing up, and there were multiple scientists with different theories, and this huge climactic buildup to finding out. By the end of it, they still didn't know. They crashed them together, and they still didn't know. And in fact, they're more confused now, because actually, they think that there now may be multiple universes, and the findings that came from this actually does bear out. It doesn't disprove the fact that there could be multiple universes, which is just, come on, it's insane. Like at the point at which we already have 100 billion stars in our galaxy alone, which is part of 100 billion galaxies. And to think that that's just one universe and maybe an infinite number of universes.
Human civilization is a fart. Just one.
A wet one.
One silent but deadly.
Yeah, silent but deadly.
Universe.
Yes. Yeah.
That's one of the many different random thoughts that I've had with people about just even ghosts. Like it could very much be that we're looking at points in existence where some part of this universe is overlapping with the other part.
That's actually an incredible. That's a great thought.
I wouldn't insult it by calling it a theory.
It's not a theory, and in fact, I get castigated online all the time for calling things theories when they're just thoughts, and really it's just like, okay, who cares? Shut up.
So let me ask something. So when you started to feel yourself veering away from being a militant atheist, was that because your definition of spirituality changed through some of your experiences?
Yeah, actually, that's probably more what it was.
Because you were, it seems, I'm only just projecting my own experiences here, but it could be that we let the religious right define spirituality for so long that finally we were like, no, wait a minute, you guys are defining it. Well, we have our own definition of what it is. And it doesn't battle science. It mixes very well with it.
Right, absolutely. And I actually think it was more of you can't prove a negative. And I think you were hinting towards something like this at the beginning of our talk, which is how can you say that something definitely doesn't exist? Just the very concept of atheism to me is it doesn't make sense. A far more, just call it agnosticism at the very least. You don't know.
Yeah.
Because you don't. I think really my veering away from it is more of just a hope and a desperation that there is something going on, and I don't think I'm going to die and go to heaven.
Yeah.
Or any major form of sentience that I have is not going to subsist.
Yeah. Well, these are all human concepts.
Right.
You know, like we talk about like going to heaven, you know, that's, I remember on my first DMT trip, that was the major epiphany. I came back from this other place and I was like, oh, like they tell you heaven is like this beautiful euphoric place. But where I went, the realization was that euphoria is a human feeling.
Right. Yeah.
And that thing exists in
yeah.
It's a chemical human feeling. It doesn't exist on the other, you know, whatever the concept of God is, it is mind-blowing what little rat's ass God cares about your petty human things.
Right. And it, I mean, God would be just whatever is outside of us, you know, like we're just perceiving things. Whatever is outside us that's just actually there. Yeah. If it is actually there. To me, that's what God is. And if there is some like tangible feeling there, if there's, you know, there's so many theories about that the universe is just a conscious mind. Who knows? Who knows?
It's kind of a fascinating thing. I've noticed in the past few months, I've started noticing it where people, not necessarily the listeners of this show, but a lot of people have just pretty much replaced the word God with universe.
Right.
But they're applying the same principles to it. Like I see people literally on Facebook saying like, why did the universe do this to me? I've been so good. Like literally they just replaced the word because it was this way to rebel against the previous generation for their definition of God. But they're no closer to understanding the concept of God than the previous generation that they're condemning for.
Totally agree, and it's the same with the word karma. Karma is kind of just this like weird socioeconomic like bullshit that we've made up that there is, you know.
Literally just made it up. Like it has nothing to do with the concept.
Karma, like good karma would be that there's not like hundreds of billions of people starving to death, or not hundreds of billions, but a billion people starving to death. That would be good karma. Yeah. You getting extra avocado on your burrito for free is not good karma. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the universe, quote unquote, has more important shit to worry about than the extra avocados on your...
Yeah, the universe is busy expanding at this exponential rate and creating new galaxies and stars. Like, no one cares whether you were able to download, you know,
How did your family process your moving away from atheism?
Well, no, they... I mean, they're kind of sort of on board with it. They're much closer to death now. Yeah. So that makes it easier to my mother always believes in, you know, a kind of, it's really actually just kind of more like a paganistic, like nature-based truth. My father takes and I love both of them dearly, so don't let any nuance of my voice impart otherwise, but my father takes kind of the Noam Chomsky approach, which is that it's atoms in the void, there's nothing else, and, you know, no need to be terrible to each other or negative, but
no need to waste your time thinking about it either.
We are atoms, and the things we're thinking about right now are chemicals that are made of those atoms. And when the system shuts down, we're not going to be here anymore.
Yeah. There's I think about these a lot because I've definitely personally have discovered a lot more spirituality in the past couple of years, and in ways that I've even had spiritual experiences that have been unsettling. Just even thoughts going deep down the rabbit hole about the very nature of reality and then kind of being depressed for a couple of days even.
You just reminded me of something. And I want you to continue. I just want to put a bookmark here so that I don't forget. Yeah. I don't want to forget DMT.
Okay.
But keep going. Yeah. Please keep going. I just wanted to bookmark that because I had forgotten it. And I was sitting there trying to think, what the hell did I just forget? Okay, so you had a disturbing...
I'll remember that, don't worry.
You had a disturbing experience.
Yeah, I've had a few. Disturbing is a strong word. I'd say unsettling.
Right, okay.
I've had, you know, eating some mushrooms and having these very deep 5-hour conversations about the fabric of reality and then spending the next 3 days kind of like, ooh, what the hell am I doing here? What's the point to all this? You know, and for the most part, it's beautiful. For the most part, life becomes more beautiful for people like us, at least, as we explore that. But the reason I was bringing that up is because there's this really fascinating story on NPR 2 or 3 years ago. I don't know where this study's at right now, but basically the main character of the story, if you will, the subject, his grandmother, his mother passes away. And the night after the funeral, he and his sister are sitting on the front porch of their childhood home, and they feel this breeze, and the wind chimes that their mother loved so much started to dangle through the wind. And then they had this kind of beautiful experience where they felt like that was her soul moving on to the other realm. Goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning and says, wait a fucking minute, I'm an atheist. Where the fuck did that come from? And on top of that, he's a behavioral psychologist, I believe. So he starts to put together models. Evolutionary psychologist. So he starts to put together models to try to study like where this thought comes from. I'm not going to get into the details of the story, mostly because I don't remember the studies, but he studies on different groups of classrooms by teaching, telling one group there's somebody watching over them, somebody there isn't, to see who cheated, yada, yada. But the working theory that he's working with is that we as human beings have evolved to have the capacity to believe in the supernatural. And that exists in our systems because a couple of thousand years ago, if I busted into your house and I killed you and I raped your wife and I took your money, what are they going to do? Send CSI to come and track down and check my fingerprints and send helicopter? No, none of that technology existed. So one of the ways that we could control populations was by making them fully believe that I might not catch you, but somebody in the afterlife will. So you need to stop killing and raping each other and let's build this fucking village.
Some kind of ultimate justice.
Yeah. So a lot of times when we have these spiritual thoughts, that is part of what I keep in my mind as well. Am I just...
Well, it's definitely an evolutionary impulse to not want to die, and I mean the sheer thought of death, of not being here, it's too much for most people to handle. To go about your daily life and to treat people well and believe in equality. And to do so for the sheer fact of because it's the right thing to do is too much for most people without the idea that they'll be rewarded for it.
Yeah. And let me ask you that then. Because can we really take credit for that? Do you remember a time in your life where you did want to kill hamsters and then you thought, no, logically this is incorrect and I should stop doing that? Or is there some possibility that a lot of us maybe are just wired a certain way?
You're talking about ethics and morality?
Yes.
Right. I mean, I don't believe that there is an objective right and wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very subjective, for sure.
I mean, I guess I just read too much Nietzsche during that same semester, by the way, at Santa Cruz. Fuck you, Santa Cruz, by the way. You fucked my head up so badly. It's just ridiculous. However, I think that I do believe in virtue. And I think just as the same way as there's an evolutionary impulse to not want to die and to make up stories, I also think there's an evolutionary impulse to treat people well.
Yeah.
It's been... But
we don't all have that.
We definitely don't all have that, but the great experiment going on right now is seeing whether that impulse will live on. Because if it doesn't, we won't.
Yeah.
And that's the great impulse, or the great experiment we're seeing right now. And I mean, I won't lie, it doesn't look good to me right now. But we're underdogs, and everyone loves a good underdog story, and we have to believe that. There's some kind of shift that's going on right now, and I think these transformational festivals and the kind of culture we're a part of are a part of that.
Yeah. It's one of the thoughts that I had when I was having some of my dark moments was that we as human beings could very well just be a virus, and we are experiencing this realm of reality with all this stuff, but Really, like, we could just be like virus on some sort of a larger organism, and we are destroying this organism. And it's almost like people that are within our community, the transformational festivals and the positive thinking, et cetera, et cetera. It's entirely possible that we are a vaccine. We are completely going against the grain of what human beings are programmed to be doing.
Or we're helping the virus live longer.
I don't know. Are we? Are we? Because the virus...
If we're a virus, and if humanity is a virus and we need to die off, then positivity is bad.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're stepping forward and saying, no, I don't want to continue being part of this normal world and going to my 9-to-5 job and being another cogwheel in the machine. Like, I want to start something new. I want to change the way people do things.
Ugh.
Stop reproducing. Stop creating companies and corporations. Stop all of this.
Oh, the reproducing thing trips me out because, oh God, I mean, I really should not have a kid.
I'm with you. I really don't think you should have a kid either. No, I don't want any either. The people who should be reproducing are reproducing the least is the problem.
You just well played. But I mean, people who think like this, and not that we're part of some like esoteric special club just because we think about quantum spirituality, but
spin fire.
We need wear camelbacks. The whole gamut of humanity must reproduce. We can't have just certain demographics with certain beliefs reproducing, or evolutionarily we're gonna hit a certain kind of species.
Yeah.
But
we are such a
I simply don't know enough about that subject to comment further. But I guess, kids, what I'm saying is go out there and reproduce, because this planet needs more people. More people.
More people.
More people. We need more.
More people to eat things.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. No, when we were talking about this subject earlier, like just even on the topic of, are some people just wired to be more ethical, to be more moral?
Right.
And it got me thinking about...
It's a really crazy, fascinating subject. It is, to me, at least.
It's terrifying, too, to some extent.
It is terrifying, yeah.
Because to some extent, it's like, we're giving ourselves some pat on the backs for being good people. But really, I mean, how much credit can we take for that?
None.
I always wonder about that. Because I don't remember a time where I was, like, cool with stomping hamsters and then I decided, no, I don't want to kill things anymore. It pretty much was like that since childhood. And everybody I know, like yourself, like myself, like all the people that we're friends with, they've been like that since childhood. This isn't like a new thing. I
think people are very unwilling to admit, perhaps unwilling to even conceive of the fact that they are not them. They are not, you are not you. You're not in control of you. This surface interface that you call your personality is really just the surface of a subconscious mind that's going on. And
you're the product of decades of socialization.
Socialization, also just this absurd biological mechanism, this experiment the universe has blessed us with. And I mean, it is fascinating, but don't kid yourself. You're not in control of what you're doing. Any given moment, you could do something crazy, and a syndrome that you didn't know you had could strike. A tumor you didn't know you had could start manifesting symptoms, and you would not be that person anymore. And oh God, we're getting so negative here. I feel like
that's cool.
That's cool. Let's die, bro. Let's die. At the same time, as an experiment, it's kind of cool. And I've had this one epiphany I've had recently is just that, sometimes I get like really jealous of other people that are doing things that I want to do. And one great epiphany I've had that I try to keep with me at all times is that at least it's happening.
Yeah.
At least that's being experienced. what does it really matter whether I'm experiencing it or not?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And this is actually the perfect segue to go back to your bookmark.
All right.
Because, so, yes.
That bookmark was DMT?
Yes, yes. So after my first trip, I started to actually keep a list of all the physical changes I felt in my body.
Interesting.
Full on physical. I mean, the list got to like 50, 60 items.
Wow.
And one of the very concretely measurable changes was that one of the things that I'd been working towards prior to my trip was working on my jealousy. I definitely had a lot of jealousy growing up about issues with women. A lot of it, I think, just came from, Middle Eastern upbringing, baggage with my dad. I mean, I have massive daddy issues. And I remember one of the earliest moments that I had that I started to become aware of what we can best describe as our soul, our mind, our consciousness versus like what the body does, was that I did not logically agree with the thoughts that were creating the jealousy, and yet I could feel the jealousy in my gut, this burning, stabbing sensation. So I meditated and researched on this quite a bit, and I felt the jealousy was easier to control over the years. After my DMT trip, I felt like that chunk of my physical body was like removed.
Oh, man.
For the most part.
You excised it. It was like an exorcism.
Yeah, yeah.
That's incredible.
I really don't feel it the way I used to. And it was almost an overnight thing. It was before the trip. I still felt it. I'd have to talk myself out of it, have a little conversation in my head. After the trip, it's been removed. Gone. Now it's just I don't even there.
I've had similar things like that. Not with DMT, but with just parts of yourself just disappearing. I mean, that's awesome. I mean that's testimony to how therapy takes a variety of forms, you know, and drug use. I mean, ecstasy was originally developed for couples therapy.
Yeah.
And it's still used for couples therapy.
Yeah, just very different kind of couples therapy.
Weird, like glowing orgy sex side of sex therapy.
I'm not quite sure. I really understand. Ecstasy does not help me get an erection.
No, nor I. But I haven't taken ecstasy since college. But it definitely did not facilitate any virility on my.
Yes. It's the anti Viagra. So you wanted to bookmark DMT though, and so let's go back to that. What was your?
I haven't taken DMT. I want to. It's supposed to be the chemical that is released from your brain when you die.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy concept. It's released in large amounts when you die. It's released in small amounts when you dream.
So goes the theory. I read it's not concrete.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, all right. No. I mean, so there's a great film. I don't know if you guys know the filmmaker Gaspar Noé. I can't pronounce his name right. He made the just hideous film Irreversible. It's hideous because it has a hideous scene in it.
Okay.
But he also made a film called Enter the Void.
Yeah.
And it envisions.
I didn't like it.
You didn't like it?
I didn't like it.
Well,
I didn't.
Really? Why not? I mean, it's pedantic and arrogant and.
Look, I don't know.
Visually.
No. It's an expertly crafted film.
Right.
And here's the thing. I think the screenplay, the issue of it for me, it could have been that it was a language barrier issue. Because I believe he's French, isn't he?
Maybe. By the way, this is not my DMT story, but...
Yeah.
Okay.
No, now I feel like ranting about Enter the Void because it got so much attention and people fucking love this movie. But to me, like, I watched it and I was constantly thinking that it's as if the screenplay was written by somebody who's never done any drug before. Like the way that 40-year-olds write those like teenage comedies, like no teenagers don't fucking talk like that. So that's what I felt to me when I was watching. I thought it was brilliant.
I'll be honest with you. I really didn't pay much attention to the dialogue or the scenes or anything. I was watching it for two specific reasons. The depictions of what DMT is like and then the sex scenes with whatever the actress his name was. I can't remember her name, but she is absolutely.
Oh yeah, that is a good sex scene.
yeah. I mean, the sex scenes aren't even that great, but she is just so amazingly beautiful.
Yeah.
But also the DMT sequences, the visualizations of that. Anyway,
it was pretty well done. I've
done some research on DMT, despite having not done it. And I was shocked and chagrined to realize, and I wrote an article about it on the ghostdiaries.com.
Well done.
That a huge amount of research went into DMT in 60s or 70s, maybe even 80s. I don't know the exact decade, but there's a dude that spent an incredible amount of time giving DMT to a variety of patients. And he was meticulous about the controls of the experiment. And he was a skeptic going in. I mean, he didn't believe that DMT was anything more than simply, he was going to try and use it therapeutically.
Yeah.
What he was shocked to realize or to find is that an abnormal number of people that take DMT report having some kind of interface with a different kind of being. There are a variety of descriptions of this being. It's been described as machine elves.
Yeah.
Insectoids, like grasshopper type creatures, and sometimes simply just a presence. And so the theory is that the thought is that the idea is that DMT could, because DMT is found in so many biological organisms, it's not a drug really. It's and scientists, please correct me when I'm wrong. It is either a molecule or it is something found naturally in nature, found in many organic life forms. The idea being that it is in some way a chance for us to experience the different realms of consciousness occurring on Earth at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's not a drug, it's a portal. It just happens to have taken the shape.
You said it better than me. Yeah. And I want to take it. Can't find it. Yeah. Kind of scared. Yeah. Don't know if I actually want to take it.
I was actually
I kind of want to save it. Like I kind of want to save that great portal for the end. Like, you know, like I don't know if why waste the great portal when I'm just going to go back to like bitching about Taco Bell, you know, afterwards. Not that I eat Taco Bell.
I can tell you personally, because my experience, at least, is that if
you actually took. You've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've full on blasted off twice.
Jesus. Okay.
No, there is physical benefits to taking it, and if you're on that, if you have the intention, you're on that personal growth journey. My observation has been that it will solidify those things for you. Now, if you're not specifically on that journey, if you don't have that awareness, again, my observation has been that it'll show you exactly what you need. And everybody sort of has like these sort of clogged tubes in their psyche and in their history and their personality, and it'll unclog the tube that you didn't realize was clogged further down in your plumbing. So that's why everybody comes back with a different kind of message.
Did you feel a presence of a different being?
Yes, absolutely.
Did it manifest itself in a shape?
Well, on my first one, the place that I got to, where I went, it was sort of like this floating space where I can best describe as so there's this description that a friend of mine gave about the consciousness, the greater consciousness, and what it is. He said, so you have your fingers. Each one of your fingers feels like it's this individual thing, but they're all connected to the hand. So they're all really one thing, even though they feel like these individual things. So the place that I got to, what I saw and what I knew to be true, what I was looking at, was that there were infinite number of digits that were all connected to this one thing. So it was almost like it was the greater consciousness of all the living souls in the world. and each one of these digits was an individual soul, but we were all part of the same thing. And I felt that combined feeling of being one with everything, but also kind of being me. But I wasn't me anymore. I no longer had my individual ego.
It's incredible. But my first acid trip at Santa Cruz.
Of course, it's Santa Cruz.
It was. I looked at a wall, and it was a wall of every human soul that had ever existed, and it was a tidal wave of those souls just coming at me.
Wow.
And it didn't scare me. It actually just fascinated me. And when I looked at the floor, for example, there is a beautiful rug in the studio we're in. If I had looked at this rug, all the shapes would be interconnecting, but ultimately they would come back to faces. Now this could come back to the evolutionary thing, and maybe we're just wired to see human patterns, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, with DMT, back to your experience, I mean, this is not a drug.
No,
DMT is not. No. That's very important. It cannot be overstated that DMT is not a drug. I mean, it can be synthesized in a way that is a drug, but
we need to access it somehow. It just happens to take that shape.
Right, and then I think ashwagandha it figures in there somewhere. I'm not
familiar.
Okay, we'll move on.
Well, I mean, even just going back to what we were talking about the different kinds of people out there, the ones who are more moral and who aren't. When I first had the experience, I felt that there was no way in a million years that you could have this experience and ever be the same again and come back and still be the same kind of shitty, dickish human being. However, I have heard of stories.
I'm still a dick.
Yeah.
Nah.
I'm kind of a dick sometimes.
I'm kidding.
No, but I have actually run across, not people myself, but I heard friends of mine who run across people who are pushing DMT the same way that they're pushing blow and weed. They're like, yeah, I got some DMT to sell. It's good shit. But I mean, it's just, to me, that's mind-blowing. But to me, that also says that they must not have actually broken through to the other side.
Right. Well,
which is what happens, by the way, in Enter the Void. He doesn't actually... Well, I guess there's sort of double meanings and stuff. But like when he's looking at the visuals and stuff, he's not actually breaking through. He's just taking one hit and seeing crazy shit.
Right. He immediately goes into that. I mean, he takes a hit and it's like 3 seconds later he's seeing these visuals. And to a certain extent, I'm agreeing with you now that it is a fairly simplistic depiction of DMT use. Yeah, I mean, look, if Dick Cheney took acid...
he'd come back more disturbed and freaked out.
Yeah, we might have a third Iraq war.
Yeah,
what's
the you familiar with the allegory of the cave?
The Platonian.
Yes.
Thing?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I for the 3 listeners out there who might not know what it is, I have a feeling our listeners do. But I mean, it's
a pretty standard allegory. Yeah.
But I mean, that is really how it ends, though, is that if the person who has been released into the real world and sees the beauty and they come back to try to free the others, they'll see that he's been blinded and he can't see because his eyes have to readjust, and they would kill him. So that's what happens is, Dick Cheney can do the acid and he'll come back and say, whoa, fuck that. Let's throw these people in jail.
It's a profound question whether if Dick Cheney took acid, he would be different. Given the fact that the CIA experimented like a mother foe during the 60s and 70s, a huge number of those neocons, I don't know, actually. I don't know if people like Donald Rumsfeld and Astro, I don't know. I mean...
I feel that they wouldn't, because I feel that their entire sense of self and their entire success as human beings has been from not only being absolutely plugged into the machine, but by wholeheartedly understanding how the machine works and manipulating the machine in order to get everything they want.
Well said. And yeah, and I think that even if they had taken it once, they would come back and probably quickly reassimilate into what the pleasure principle, what makes them feel good, and what gives them power. Yeah. And unfortunately, our world is ruled by people that, crave power.
burnerpodcast.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. Quick little break where we make some of our announcements. March 1st, that's coming up real quickly. That's the Spring Town Hall and Elections. That's being held at CoLab, the San Diego base of operations of Burnerdom. That's behind 6061 Fairmount Avenue in San Diego, California. Please join us for our annual Spring Town Hall meeting. There's presentations, information, volunteer opportunities from groups and upcoming community events. There's food, entertainment, and your opportunity to hear the candidates speak one last time before you cast your vote. If you want more info on that, check out the last episode of Burner Podcast, which was a bonus episode about SD-CAP's board elections in San Diego. It's really interesting shit. If you're not even from San Diego, come by. It'll be a lot of fun, I think, for you to learn more about what's going on over here. March 8th is Prequinox Bike Workshop. Now, don't get that mixed up with Bequinox, which is the LA burner here. The Prequinox Bike Workshop is going to be held at 2013 Ritchie, Santa Ana, California. Ritchie is Ritchey. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. There's an organized bike tour during Bequinox, so you can get your Playa bike up and running earlier this year at the Slacker Space Bike Workshop. We'll help you with repairs and decorations. Bring your bike as well as fur, zip ties, double-sided tape, hot glue guns, EL wire, shelf paper, anything you think would look funky. All are welcome, kids as well. Prequinox Bike Workshop, that's 2013 Ritchie, Santa Ana, California. That's on March 8th. Also on March 8th, if you're in San Diego and not in the LA area, the Burner Picnic is happening at Presidio Park, which is 2811 Jackson Street, San Diego, California. Jackson or Jackson? It's kind of a weird thing. Anyway, just look up Presidio Park and it'll come up. Let's cheer on spring with a Burner Picnic in the park from 12 to 3 p.m. Help create a friendly atmosphere of radical inclusion and community. Bring your favorite outdoor games, chairs, and a dish to share, and a table if you have one. Presidio Park allows alcoholic beverages, but no glass. So bring your own cup, plate, utensils. Look for the white pop-up shade structure. March 8th, Burner Picnic at Presidio Park in San Diego. March 15th, if you are in Austin, Texas, South by Southwest, there's a small chance I'll be there. Very small chance. I don't know. Maybe if I am, try to find me. Burning Man South by Southwest meetup is happening at the JW Marriott in room 508. The JW Marriott is 110 East 2nd Street in Austin, Texas. Again, that's room 508, the Burning Man South by Southwest meetup on March 15th. March 20th is the Eternal Family Circus. That's in Yacumba. Man, I can't say that. It's spelled Jacumba. The Eternal Family Circus. The freaks come out at night. 2 nights of camping, 30 hours of non-stop music on 2 floors, natural hot springs and tubs, Hakumba, whatever that is, train depot and cars, art exhibits, food, drinks, performers. Just Google Eternal Family Circus. It pops right up. They've done pretty good SEO on it, and you can get tickets and all that good stuff over there. Just Google Eternal Family Circus. That's March 20th. March 21st is back to CoLab in San Diego for the Spring Bling Craft Fair and Fundraiser. Not just a fundraiser, but it's a fundraiser. It's remember, that's behind 6061 Fairmount Avenue at CoLab in San Diego. All proceeds from the door and donations will go to fun projects within the CoLab, like upgrading the internet capabilities and remodeling the storage room downstairs into another more accessible meeting room. Tons of food and fun and music and vendors and awesome shit. Come be with friends and buy some great things and blah, blah, blah. March 26th is producer Meg's birthday. Ha! I see what she did there. Producer Meg went ahead and slipped her birth date into the event announcements, not unlike your high school prom date, who swore it was going to be just a tip. All right, let's get back to Jake Anderson on Burner Podcast.
You are dusty and beautiful.
Yeah. Well, this kind of segues over to the other magazine that you run, the other online magazine that you run. Evil Core.
Yeah, I can't even believe you are bringing that up. Yeah, I started a blog called evilcorpse.com, which not evil corpse as in like corpse.
Yeah, it's like corporation.
Yeah, corporate.
Yes.
Language, yeah, that's awesome. Evilcorpse.com. Yeah, it's just calling out. I think we live in a corporatocracy, which is that government and corporations are in complete collusion. And so, yeah, this blog is, at this point, it is just a blog. Just articles about corporate corruption and big corporations.
Yeah.
I'm not at the point where I'm going to sit here and, call out, disparage small, mid-sized businesses.
Yeah.
But large corporations are destroying our democracy. So,
when did you start that one?
very recently, right before Christmas.
Okay.
So
what was the motivation behind starting it?
I really felt I had to. It's been a compulsion of mine for a long time to start a site. Like at my core, like I'm an activist, but I can't go out into San Diego, the activist scene, for a reason I don't want to talk about. But so I'm going to do it online.
Yeah.
And it's important for people to know how much data is being collected about them by the government and corporations at the same time. They work at the same time. For example, the government paid AT&T to sit down and go over phone calls dating back 26 years. Data mining for obviously certain keywords and whatnot. This is strictly illegal and unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter anymore, apparently, because corporations buy our politicians. It doesn't matter anymore what they do, and that's fascistic and wrong. So we have to call out the big corporations who are not too big to fail. And we have to stand up. The big thing that's happening right now is net neutrality. And it's important for people to contact the FCC and tell them to uphold net neutrality, to strike down any legislative proposal by corporations to get rid of net neutrality. Because then, for example, things like what we're doing right now, this kind of podcast would load slower than, say, a Sprint advertisement.
Yeah.
So it is absolutely, people don't realize how important this fight is and how in 20 to 30 years from now we could look back and be like, oh my God, how did we not realize how important this was? Yeah. Fortunately,
to some extent, it already is loading slower, by the way. I can tell you that right now. Like an individual podcast running, like if you try to jump ahead right now, because you're probably listening to this on Libsyn or iTunes, you try to jump ahead, it takes a while. Whereas that Sprint ad, there's still more technology behind it, and it will load faster regardless.
Well, given that they...
So it's just going to get worse.
Spy on us while we use the bathroom, it wouldn't surprise me if they were also surreptitiously speeding up, slowing down the internet. But the main point is that people have to get more involved. I had an interesting experience today where I gave my phone number to an activist site, and they said that they were going to immediately call me. And they called me and said, "We're connecting you immediately to a representative." And I was like, oh, fuck. What did I just do? But it was easy. First of all, you're not going to talk to the representative. You're talking to their assistant. But what you're doing is you're flooding their office and letting them know how important it is. It is important to contact the House of Representatives.
Interesting.
Ultimately, if they get a huge paycheck from a corporation, that may trump the House of Representatives, but they only have 2-year election cycles, so they can be voted out. So if they feel enough people calling in, they'll vote the right way. And right now, right now the FCC looks like it's going to do the right thing. Obama's lent his support to it.
Nice.
It looks like we're going to survive for right now, but I am not optimistic for the future of net neutrality, and it terrifies me. But we have to keep fighting, and if you don't know what net neutrality is, please Google it.
That one, I think, for the most part, people know that it's something they should be worried about, even if they're not familiar with the details of it. And that's what I wanted to ask you about the site. So what was your motivation for starting a new blog rather than contributing to one that's already established?
Well, for a while with the Ghost Diaries, I do have a conspiracy section on the Ghost Diaries, which I post about all the time. I am a conspiracy theorist. I have a multitude of ways I could describe why I think that phrase has been stigmatized to the detriment of democracy and to the benefit of the power mechanisms.
Absolutely. It's the same. The title, whatever, the phrase conspiracy theorist, the same way as we were saying earlier about how spirituality and the word God has been hijacked to mean something else. Same thing. Absolutely.
But you see publications like Popular Mechanics and even Vice. Vice just did an article disparaging conspiracy theories. I wrote an article about 10 conspiracy theories that turned out to be true. It was originally published on Audi.com. And you'd be shocked at how many conspiracy theories are actually true as opposed to the ones that are not true. Now, of course, we can get it gets very problematic when you get into things like vaccinations, chemtrails, GMOs.
Yeah.
I personally haven't done enough research on the first two to have an opinion on them. I do think we should not be using GMOs because we can feed the world food supply without them, and we haven't vetted them enough to know. And guess who's on my side? Bill Nye, the science guy. Yeah, he's pretty smart, and he agrees that we have not vetted GMOs enough.
Look, I could tell you this. As someone who's lost a lot of weight,
you are looking good. I will say that.
Thank
yes.
you very much. That's really, the wine is starting to get to you. I see.
Yeah,
my plan is working perfectly.
Should we turn the microphone off?
It's the only reason I even have this podcast, to be honest.
Or maybe they want us to leave it running.
That's going to be on the spin-off show that I'm starting. It's a whole adult-themed podcast.
We'll see what happens.
You never know. You never know. It's only 50 minutes in. But no, that's one of the things that I discovered is that, you could get down into like arguing the perfect way to describe it. You can look at the trees or you can take a step back and look at the forest. So you might argue that there's like this chemical and this thing and this GMO, like, yeah, it's not bad for you because look at this study doesn't say this and this study doesn't show this, et cetera, et cetera. But I can tell you as somebody who's lost a lot of weight that a big way that I was able to do it was just basically approaching the idea of eating as close to nature as possible.
Sure, yeah.
And I don't know what the reasoning behind that is, but that makes a difference.
It makes sense to you on a biological level.
Instead of drinking orange juice, eat the orange.
You want the food supply that's closest to you and that's most natural. And we've gotten away from that. People are consuming food supplies that have been shipped to them from across the world that have lost all their nutrients, sprayed down with chemicals, and
food
come on,
has changed more.
This is getting. I mean, we're getting into cliched territory here, but it bears repeating.
Sure, yeah.
That you have to avoid. You should eat organic, first of all.
Food has changed more in the past 50 years than it ever has in the history of humanity.
It's incredible. That. And I don't know, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's a GMO supporter, and he has a pretty, big argument against it. He's obviously way smarter than me, infinitely smarter than me. But I think his I think his defense of GMOs is really weak.
What is his defense?
That basically we've always been genetically modifying foods.
Yeah. I get the argument.
And sure, but I don't think he's understanding the role of Monsanto in this. And Monsanto is an evil corporation.
They really are. There's something out of a Bond movie, aren't they?
They really should be the banner headline on my site.
Yeah.
And not simply because they're producing GMOs, but because how they're producing the GMOs so that they spread and infect local farmers' farms. And basically put local farmers out of business. And it's complete monopolization on a global level. And, that kind of thing's important to know. But, conspiracy theory, that's where we started. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's truth.
Yeah.
Monsanto, even though it's evil is subjective, which is where we started, Monsanto does things to the world that are not beneficial to the human race.
Yeah.
That's a better way to put it than evil. But so to answer your original question, I decided that really on a website level, it makes more sense to target your niche audience. And I don't want to go too far into conspiracy theories on the Ghost Diaries, simply because it gets to, well, actually, it's the perfect place to do it. There are certain conspiracy theories. We're not going to talk about them here, but simply because you can't talk about them, because in the past 14 years, they've done such an incredible propaganda job to make it impossible to talk about.
Yeah.
But I wanted to differentiate very real corporate malfeasance from speculative conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
What corporations are actually doing that are messed up. For example, Google's CEO bragging that they don't pay any taxes, or Walmart really just making a big issue out of underpaying and mistreating their employees.
Yeah.
To me, that deserves a separate category than a site that is also affiliated with ghosts and exorcisms.
Sure. Yeah. No, absolutely.
So that's the long answer to why I decided to differentiate the sites.
Yeah. Do ghosts scare you?
No.
So if you saw like the cabinet open up right now in my apartment, that wouldn't.
No, it'd be awesome. I would love it. It's one of the reasons I focus so hard on it, is because I would just love to see something.
Yeah. Have you always been that way?
I've always been that way.
You've never had the fear.
I'd love to see something. I've never had the fear. I've always desperately craved to see a UFO.
Yeah.
And for the record, I believe UFOs are most likely all drones, government drones. Maybe 0.01%.
Yeah.
Could be from another star, whatever.
The other approach that they might be connected to what we're describing as the consciousness, the multiverse, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
It could be some sort of a spiritual thing.
Right. But
McKenna talks about.
But back to the fact of the matter is, I'm not scared of it, because I'm way more scared of atoms in the void.
Yeah.
And nothingness than I am of some incredible presence. I mean, that's an incredible thing to me. Even if it's, if there's a ghost that left negative information behind, let's say I killed you in this room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just for
seduce me and then
for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
Let's say I murdered you in this room, and your consciousness left behind some fragments of that.
Some trace amounts. That
That would be kind of interesting. I don't know. I mean, I think that'd be more interesting than literally nothingness.
Yeah.
You know. So I did have an experience not 2 weeks ago that I thought was my first paranormal experience.
Okay. So you haven't had actual paranormal experiences?
I haven't.
Oh God, you poor bastard.
Well, no. Okay. I mean, I've had no. Oh, I take that back. I've had it's circumstantial.
Yeah.
It's circumstantial, and I can. I don't know how much longer we have here, but
Yeah, how about it?
yeah.
Don't you worry about the time. That's my job.
All right. Well, I was with a friend of mine, and I was taking my shoes off, and
It's already scary.
put my 2 shoes down, started talking about something. Look back down. One of the shoes is gone.
Yeah.
Gone.
Got up and walked away.
Shoe gone. Gone.
Okay.
Like Gone Girl, gone shoe.
Yeah.
You know. And I said, "Where's my shoe?" Because I just thought I was like, you know, maybe I'm like, you know, drunk, or I started looking under like all the different little crevices. Really kind of started to take it seriously. And then I said, "No, seriously, where's my shoe?" And then the friend who I was with, she started being like, "Where is your shoe?"
Yeah.
And it got to the point where we actually started getting kind of frantic, because it literally was as if the shoe had disappeared.
Yeah.
Like a glitch in the Matrix or something, you know? We went around, we looked at other part of the houses, like, for fuck's sake, did we put the shoe? Did for some reason I put the shoe behind the door? I mean, this went on for like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
I was almost in tears. I was like, I don't want this to be my first paranormal. I don't want this to be my revelation.
Yeah, what
that
kind
I'm
of
in the
asshole
Matrix.
dick ghost is gonna just take my shoe? Really?
Just
That's
eliminate
all?
the shoe from existence. Turns out,
Cooler shit.
suddenly, my friend was like, "Oh, it's in the closet." And upon scooping her 2 shoes up and putting them in the closet, she must have scooped one of mine.
That is
Yeah.
That is the shittiest story I've
I sighed a deep sigh of relief.
Yeah.
And then said, "Well, no ghosts there."
Were you guys drunk?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But I do have a real ghost story.
Okay.
The closest thing I have to a real ghost story. Again, Santa Cruz comes into play. Not surprising. So Santa Cruz actually has a history of this kind of stuff. And actually, the year I was a freshman there was the first floor of the A dorm of Porter College, I believe, in Santa Cruz, of the UCSC. Mm-hmm. A bunch of students started reporting feeling like a presence was choking them in their sleep.
Fuck.
Yeah, not good.
No, that's terrible.
Terrible, not good. At the same time, and freshman year, I was roommates with Jared Salas, who's a close friend of mine and who is co-author of the Ghost Diaries. And we learned of and became obsessed with the fact that a kid by the name of David had committed suicide at Porter College about 5 years earlier. He had draped himself in an American flag and shot himself.
Wow.
With a shotgun and fallen into the quad.
Why American flag?
Probably because it's fitting.
Was he trying to make a statement with his suicide?
I don't know. Probably. Who knows what people... I mean, at the point at which you're taking the Kurt Cobain route, I get pretty low. I go pretty far, but when you get to that point, I don't know what's... I mean... Sorry.
Well, if you're doing that, you're making a statement. I mean, we know that from some...
I don't necessarily think so. I mean, I think he was just like, I'm so done. What's the craziest way I can go out?
Yeah.
You know?
But even that desire to go out in a crazy way, my understanding of it is that the method which you use to commit suicide is a huge indicator of the things that were going on. So
maybe
shooting yourself is more dramatic.
I've had
cutting your wrists. For
the only
example.
experience I've had with it is my aunt committed suicide, and I know a lot of people in this community have had very close friends commit suicide. I
was suicidal at a younger age. I'm very familiar.
I have been suicidal.
A lot of crazy artists in this community.
It's another thing that's stigmatized. Being in so much pain that you just would rather it not be there.
Yeah.
This particular kid, and I mean, God, it's horrible. He was very young, but he did this terrible thing. He draped himself in an American flag and shot himself and fell into the quad. So Jared and I became very obsessed with this and started researching every article we could find. And we actually talked to a friend of his who at the time was, his name was Cafeteria Joe. And he worked in the cafeteria. He was a previous student of UCSC.
It's a great name.
It's a fabulous name. Yeah. Great chili, by the way.
I would imagine.
And
can't be Cafeteria Joe and not make good chili.
No.
It's bullshit.
No. And he was very open with us about how fucked up it was. But he didn't give us any details because I guess there were none. The guy just kind of went off the deep end suddenly, and sure, probably drugs were probably involved. Anyway, so we spent weeks obsessed with this. We read all the obituaries, and this, of course, feeds into how Ghost Diaries came about, this kind of obsession with the morbid. And one day, I went out to the Porter Quad, and I was sitting there, and I was ruminating upon life, and I started...
Like you do.
Like I do, like I am wont to do, and I started noticing out of the corner of my eye, I noticed, gradually I noticed that there was someone circling the quad. Didn't take notice of it, why would I? There's lots of people that come out to the quad.
Sure.
But then finally I realized...
What hour of the day was this?
I want to say midday.
Midday.
Day.
And the quad wasn't busy?
It wasn't busy at all. Okay. It was actually, now that I look back upon it, it was eerily, he was the only one there.
Okay.
I noticed that the figure had stopped, and he was staring up at a balcony. And I thought to myself...
This is from the corner of your eye. You're not looking directly.
No, I looked directly at him at one point, but I mean, it was far enough away that I couldn't make out definitive facial structures or anything like that. I thought in my mind, okay, well, I'm going to go back to my room and I'm going to look up the balcony that David committed suicide off it. And I'm just going to sit there. I'm just going to assume it's not the same one.
Okay.
Okay, well, it was the same one.
Assume the balcony's not the same one?
Yeah, assume that the figure, the random figure that was circling this quad, who stopped and just stood there, arms folded, staring up at a balcony. That was the balcony that this guy had killed himself off of.
And your thought was to go back to your room?
Well, no, my thought... I guess I didn't have a specific thought. I guess I later retrospectively was like, I'm really hoping that that's not the same balcony because that's really trippy otherwise.
So you didn't think of...
Approaching him?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I should have.
Yeah. In that moment, you weren't thinking much of it.
No, exactly. At the moment, I wasn't thinking much of it.
But later, you thought back and it seemed something was off.
Right. So that's the closest thing I've had. That's it. You know,
it's interesting. My spiritual journey actually, if I can trace back to the moment that like the little switch turned on in my brain, because growing up, I always desperately wanted spirituality. I wanted to feel what people were feeling with religion, and I just could not feel it, no matter how hard I tried. Are you familiar with The Seventh Seal? It's an Ingrid Bergman
film?
film.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And there was a scene in that film that really, really touched me because I always, it really hit me, when the knight is asking death, what of those of us who want to believe, sincerely want to, but we just can't. And I was like, wow, I fall into that category. I want to believe in God. I want the spirituality that I see other people have, and it's just not clicking.
Right.
Because it just doesn't make sense. I don't feel it. But a few years ago, we were recording the Halloween episode of Crappy Awesome Podcast, which is the other podcast I've been co-hosting for years now.
Oh, cool.
And that one, long story short, we recorded it at the Cosmopolitan Hotel, which is in Old Town, one of the most haunted parts of San Diego. And the person we were interviewing was a psychic medium by the name of Bonnie Vent, who's pretty well known, and she's a blogger, and she has beef with like the ghost adventurer people. Like she's been very actively vocal against them. And
it is kind of an obnoxious community. But...
It is, yeah. Well, there is a lot of ego attached, I imagine. There's a lot of that.
Well, anytime you're creating an industry.
Yeah.
Well, anyway.
The long and short of it was that a bunch of weird shit happened. And after this podcast, I won't get into all the details of the story, but weird shit happened. And at one point during the show, I had to I all of a sudden felt myself feel completely overwhelmed with emotion. And I had to drop my headphones down and run outside and cry. And my co-hosts were continuing to talk to her. I listened to it afterwards. And by the way, she doesn't respond at all to this. She does not get weirded out at all. She just kind of doesn't even flinch.
Stonewalling.
Yeah. She's just like, oh, all right, whatever, normal. And they were asking her, what do you think happened? And she said that she said that what happened was that I accepted a universal truth that I was not ready to accept until that moment. And the subject we were talking about was about things happening for a reason. And it was about that life is not just completely random. There is some sort of a path. There is a pattern. There's a reason you're here. There is a reason you know these people. You have a destiny. And at that moment, we were just chatting and talking like normal. But then all of a sudden, I went 0 to 60. I stood outside and I checked my pulse. It was an intense experience. Afterwards, I had that sort of like post-MDMA euphoria. Felt this like intense connection with my creative partners.
You're not the first person that's happened to.
That experience.
Public personages, Clyde Lewis of Ground Zero Media. He had a very now famous, this was less than a year ago, on-air meltdown while in a haunted place.
Wow. Where
he literally felt like someone was... Like he felt like he was dying, and he started sobbing uncontrollably.
Yeah. That energy's in the room.
It could, yeah. It's something. Who knows? It could be It could be purely psychological.
Yeah. It might not be. I lean towards the idea that it's not an intelligent entity that's standing there.
Right. I lean that way too.
But there's something there.
There's something.
And how arrogant would it be for us to put our foot down and say nope?
Yeah.
I know everything, and I know that shit doesn't exist, period.
Yeah. I think the general, I don't know, if there's a premise we're getting to, it's that, we shouldn't, put down beliefs based upon our own preconceived beliefs.
No, that would be atheism.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm not a huge fan of Richard Dawkins. To be honest with you, I do. Obviously, he's extremely intelligent.
He is. I love Joe Rogan describes him. He's like, he's kind of cunty.
I do love Joe Rogan. I'll tell you that much. Yeah.
No, but that's where I've always been with agnosticism. Is that it's not that I'm unsure. People on either side like to say like, oh, it's because you don't know. Like you're unsure. You're a fence sitter. No. How fucking arrogant is it to put your foot down and say, I know everything. I am God. I know everything. And I know that shit doesn't exist.
That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's why most religion is ridiculous. Because you're saying something is the definitive truth without having any evidence for it.
Yeah.
And you're also supporting institutions that corrupt a lot of people. Religion is not an innocent thing.
Yeah.
It's instigated wars. oppression against women, oppression against gay people, oppression against child slavery.
And can I say, by the way, just in defense of atheists out there, no, I don't want to dismiss you guys' thought process, because I know there's plenty of amazing, intelligent atheists that I know. Their argument would be, show me evidence.
Well, but I think we're simply saying that I think we're simply saying that the word. I think we're talking about semantics here. Mm-hmm. I think we're talking about the word atheist. You can't say that there is no God. How could you possibly say? We're saying that you don't know. That's fine. But you think it's very unlikely that there's no God.
Well, I would even say, like, where we fall, you and I, on the argument is, yeah, I respect that you, Mr. Atheist, wants to see evidence.
Mr. Atheist.
What we're saying, however, is that the evidence that you're asking for is still evidence that's within a certain very specific structure of science. And what we're saying is that there is this entire field of science that we're just not even familiar with yet. We haven't even discovered yet.
Absolutely.
So there's this whole
the God that you may be so against, there may be we may be in the process of reconfiguring what this God would be. Mm-hmm. You know?
Yeah. It's a concept. It's not a guy with a long white beard.
It's a concept. It's a totality that we're a part of. Yeah.
So, Jake, tell me about, you have a book coming out. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean,
tell me about the book.
It's called Epic Robot Fail, and it's about, ostensibly about when in the near future we start using technology and robots to service ourselves in a variety of ways. Mm.
I know a lot of girls that are still using robots to service themselves today.
As do we all, and God bless them to their souls, you know. And Epic Robot Fail. So yeah, it's an ebook of short stories.
I'm 12 years old, by the way. I couldn't put that out there.
You're a big 12-year-old. 12
years old. Okay, yeah. It's a book of short stories.
Book of short stories.
Fiction.
Definitely fiction. Illustrated, and it's really been a long process with the illustrations. But yeah, it's sort of, you know, there's a theory that in the near future, Ray Kurzweil is the main proponent of it, that there will be something called the technological singularity, and that we will basically merge with machines. That's the first stage of it, and that eventually we'll upload our minds to computers, and basically biological humanity as we know it won't even exist anymore. It'll be computational energy.
Yeah. Listeners, if you have not seen Transcendent Man, watch that.
Johnny Depp is fantastic.
No, not the Johnny Depp movie.
I was thinking Transcendence. Oh, yes, the documentary. Yeah.
Transcendent Man is a documentary about Ray Kurzweil. It's really well executed. Whether or not you think it's total bullshit, it's a great documentary. And it's good to at least be armed with the knowledge that the documentary has. The Johnny Depp film is like the cheap Tijuana knockoff of the documentary.
I haven't seen it, so I can't. Yeah. But my book is like the first stage of it, when we start kind of the very awkward first date between the industry of sentient artificial intelligence that is kind of aware of the obsolescence of humankind, but still trying to treat us with respect. Yeah. And still trying to make us happy, and that includes sexual happiness.
I mean, you know, the first thing we're going to do is try to fuck the robots.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. It's going to happen in our near lifetime. Yeah. I mean, it's within the next...
I'm certain we'll see it in our lifetime.
Oh, within the next 20, 30 years, there will be Android, fully fleshed out Android sex slaves.
Actually, that used to like piss my ex-girlfriend off a lot. I was really fascinated with the idea of what like cheating and monogamy is, and my mind keeps going towards like we are going to develop AI and virtual reality that is so real it is completely indistinguishable, and that is going to be the peak of the conversation of what is cheating. And eventually it's just going to end up
Interesting, yeah.
coming full circle. Like, okay, well, it's just human pleasure. It's just your body. So what does it matter?
That will be a huge discussion, and virtual reality will come first. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's going to happen within the next 10 years. Yeah, there's going to be massive, crazy conversations going on between couples. Fortunately, since my heart has been ripped through my ass, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. You are such a writer. And you've got your heart broken? God.
Yeah,
any more
it
perfect.
happens. It happens. But yeah, couples will have to discuss what it means to share your orgasms and the emotions that go with it
Yeah.
with other sentient things, and whether you can still maintain a monogamous relationship, or what even monogamous relationship would mean in that context at that point.
How many stories are in the book?
4.
4. Okay. How long have you been writing it?
Well, the stories have actually been written for a while. The illustrations have been what I've been waiting for.
Who did the illustrations?
My friend Ben Anders, childhood friend from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
Bill Clinton's town.
Bill Clinton's town, and he figures right into the whole, conversation about polyamory.
Yeah.
You know,
Bill Clinton or your friend?
Bill
from Little Rock?
Clinton.
Okay.
Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton does. Yeah.
Or at least cigars.
He smoked a couple of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, epic robot fail. I'm gonna put it out, and nothing will happen, and no one will buy it, and we'll move on. And
You got to do it though. As an artist,
Yeah.
like you can't stop.
yeah, no, I don't care if it succeeds or not,
Why were the illustrations important?
because they're really demented. The cover is one of the most fucked up things I've ever seen.
Okay.
So I guess look for it when it comes out.
How did you get him to see what's in your head?
He liked the stories, and he's demented, and I'm demented, and we shared our dementia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not all of it's about sex. Some of it is about masturbation.
Of course. Yeah.
And some of it, more realistically, some of it is about future data mining and how the first, major artificial intelligences, which will be called artificial intelligences, will be used to data mine us
Yeah.
completely. And so one of the stories is about that.
Good times.
Good times, great oldies. Yeah.
How can people find the book when it comes out?
It'll be on smashwords.com.
And I imagine you'll have links up on.
I'll have links on Facebook and whatnot.
Yeah.
If it's
But also
something
on,
that.
ghostdiaries.com.
Yeah, I'll probably post a link to the book on there. And
Because we have listeners here who might not be your Facebook friends, just FYI.
right, I would.
Somebody in Little Rock, Arkansas listening to this right now.
I actually was under the assumption that all of Zuckerberg's minions were friends of mine as well. But
Of course. Cool. We got the websites, we got the book coming out. Busy dude. Do you have another book you're going to be working on next, or just getting fully into
working on a horror movie
Film.
about the Heaven's Gate cult.
Okay. Fiction.
Fiction.
But based on Heaven's Gate.
Sort of fiction.
Okay.
Starts as a documentary, turns into fiction.
Nice.
Short film based upon one of the stories in Epic Robot Fail. And a few young adult science fiction novels that I put on the back burner. I like to keep busy.
Awesome. Yeah.
While I'm here.
Very cool. Man, thanks so much for coming through.
Arash, it has been so awesome being here.
Absolutely.
I love talking to you.
Yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was actually just when we were getting home, I was thinking about how I've been in a little bit of a funk lately. And I don't know if this is related. I just got like strep throat, and I feel like something about that kind of like sucked me into like a physical. I've been like pushing myself to like go out and talk to people.
Right.
I've gotten like a really introverted, and it's not like depression, but it's kind of a funk.
Right.
I know depression.
Well, physical maladies
like
can do that.
Yeah, you know? I'm hoping that's what it is. But this conversation is really helped me feel kind of like, yeah, I feel alive. This is good.
I'm glad I could be a part of it.
Well, thanks for coming through. I'm gonna hit stop on the record button now.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Jake, again for joining us and for being a good sport. And again, I'm totally fucking with you. I have so much fun with you, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with you more often if we ever see each other again. You can tweet me directly at Mr. Arash, and when discussing the show, please use the hashtag #BurnerPodcast. Leave some reviews on iTunes. It would be very helpful for us, even shitty ones. You know, tell us to go to hell. That's totally fine. Our intermission music is by Duckman. Check out his music at duckmansd, like San Diego, .bandcamp.com. And if you're a musician in the community, send us a link to your stuff using the contact page at burnerpodcast.com, and we'll try to share it. The Burner Podcast theme song is America's Horse with No Name remix, produced by Joman. Check out his stuff at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. That's DJ Joman. This episode is produced by Meg King. If you have any questions or suggestions for future guests, shoot them over to Meg King. She is on Twitter at @MegKing. I keep wanting to say .com on that for some reason. It's so strange. It's just at that Meg King. It's Twitter, for Christ's sakes. Our online editor is Alpi. She writes and curates the blog and can be reached on Twitter at @burner_podcast. The underscore is very important. Use that or you'll be tweeting some Australian record label. And I already did the dingo joke, so I'm going to skip that this week. Or as always, you can just use the contact page at burnerpodcast.com. Hope you'll join us next time. We release new episodes on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. So until next time, love and light and all that other crap. Good night.